I've been daily driving Linux for over a decade now, and like many of you, I've been looking forward to the day when desktop Linux rises from obscurity. And I feel like there's been a significant rise in Linux usage as of late, not just amongst organizations in the EU, which obviously have an incentive to remove their dependence on closed source software that's made by US-based private companies, but there's also been a rise in Linux usage amongst everyday consumers. However, I don't think that this is the year of the Linux desktop that we've really been looking forward to. So this is the recent survey from StatCounter for desktop operating system usage in the United States. And Linux usage is at an all-time high of 5.03%, almost 40% more than last year's survey. Here's the same stat from Canada, showing a jump from 1.9% to almost 2.9%, another 50% jump. And Japan also had a noticeable jump in Linux use from 1.17 to 1.89%. Now, like I said, I believe that one of the main causes of this are organizations transitioning to a Linux-based workflow, especially in Europe. Many of the government departments over there are specifically switching for the purpose of digital sovereignty, which I'll discuss more in a bit, but the end of Windows 10 support is probably the real spearhead of this transition in corporate and government sectors. Anytime an organization is handling data and digital infrastructure, there's liability and even national security issues if they were to use outdated operating systems or an operating system in an unauthorized way. Windows 11 requires your system to support TPM 2.0, which is only officially supported on 8th gen and newer Intel CPUs and 2nd gen or newer Ryzen CPUs from AMD. These chips came out in 2017 and 2018, respectively, and are still more than capable of handling an office workload, and even some light gaming. I mean, definitely no new AAA titles unless you want to play them as a slideshow, but the integrated graphics of the i5 and i7 or upper mid-range Ryzens are probably comparable to mid-range NVIDIA cards that came out 2 or 3 years prior to these chips. Just because these chips are a few years old doesn't mean they have poor performance. You probably wouldn't even notice a difference in most corporate workloads between i7 processors from even 10 years ago and today. But obviously Microsoft doesn't want to let you continue using this older but still more than capable hardware. I mean, these are multi-core hyper-threaded processors that support up to 64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. Comment below if your PC has less RAM than that. Computers from 8+ years ago are fully capable of running modern operating systems, except for that TPM 2.0 requirement. That's really the only thing that stops any PC that's currently running Windows 10 from upgrading to Windows 11. And it's still technically possible to install Windows 11 on unsupported hardware and more or less run it fine. There's just not going to be any warranty for that setup, which doesn't matter if you're a home user. But seeing as TPM is a security module, using an outdated one is going to make insurers nervous, and it's going to make the premiums for the insurances that these organizations have to buy to go up. Even though using TPM 2.0 instead of TPM 1.2 wouldn't realistically make any difference in the data breaches that we actually hear about. Now, because StatCounter calculates this market share by tracking page views across millions of different websites, we should look at statistics that are more isolated to consumer devices to get a better idea of what's going on in that market. So this is the Steam hardware and software survey for June of 2025, a good source in my opinion because people probably aren't playing games on company-issued computers. And according to these stats, 2.57% of people are playing games on some kind of Linux distro. They break it down into some individual distros, at least for those that have a big enough market share. And of course, the biggest distro in this list is Arch, by the way. Steam actually had a record high of 2.69% Linux users back in May. So this is about a 25% increase over last year's metrics. And I think a big contributor contributor to this jump in Linux users, especially for Arch Linux, if I'm not mistaken, are handheld gaming consoles like the Steam Deck, which I believe runs Arch Linux or either a modified version of Arch Linux, or Lenovo's Legion Go, which I have no idea what that runs, or all the other kinds of derivatives. I mean, there's many different kinds of handheld Linux gaming consoles at this point. And because they have Linux pre-installed on them, and the reason for that is it turns out you get better performance and better battery life in a lot of games compared to running them on the same exact hardware, but with Windows 11 installed. And the manufacturers of these handhelds probably also save about $20 or so per device by not having to purchase Windows licenses from Microsoft. So it's a win-win for everyone. Now, quick warning about the source of this next statistic. It is from an adult website, but given the nature of it, I think it could be a good source for more consumer hardware stats. Pornhub released their year in review about what and how people are gooning to, and Linux use is apparently up by 41%. So there's a lot of penguins out there with some very sticky flippers. Now, if I had to make an educated guess about these devices, about the reason why there's a 41% increase in Linux users, I would probably look at smart TVs. I didn't see any specific stats about them, but I know that they're usually fingerprinted as either Linux devices or Android devices by the various websites you can go to on them, and either macOS or iOS for Apple TV, both of which saw a decline over the last year if we look at these stats. So just like the handheld console manufacturers, a lot of TV manufacturers are choosing to use Linux or Android for both better performance and lower cost of production due to not needing to purchase software licensing from Apple, which I don't even think they offer to anyone as an option to be built into a television. Now, obviously, we would need some more information about the user agents that Pornhub is collecting here to try and filter out actual desktops and mobile devices from smart TVs. And Steam Decks might also be contributing to this stat because I'm pretty sure the target audience, the target consumers of those kinds of devices are young males. And if there's no parental supervision, then a lot of them are probably going to end up on sites like this and contributing to the statistics. Now, the unfortunate conclusion that I'm drawing from these stats, besides questioning the cleanliness of any used Steam Deck, is that despite more and more people actually using Linux, most of them still don't understand the importance of free software. They still don't understand the foundation behind it. Some of the government organizations in Europe do kind of get it. I mean, they've mentioned digital sovereignty as the reason for the switch, which is really what consumers need to want as well in order for Linux as we know it to thrive and the tyranny of big tech to end. The whole point of this free software evangelism I do is to make people wake up to the fact that you can use technology in the ways that you want to without having arbitrary limitations placed on you by corporations. I don't necessarily care that much on a personal level if people use Linux, LibreOffice, LibreWolf ad blockers, if they have self-hosted media libraries, or use any of the software that I promote on this channel. The reason that I talk about these products is because they give us more freedom as consumers than the mainstream options. And honestly, the freedom issue goes a lot further than computers. Most people don't actually own any media anymore. They consume everything from Spotify, YouTube, Netflix, or some other online service that they pay a monthly subscription to, which in the long run probably exceeds the cost of buying the CDs or Blu-rays for whatever media they're consuming, or at least the good stuff that they're going to watch or listen to more than once. And then one day you find out that your favorite show is no longer on Netflix, your favorite song is no longer in Spotify, or your favorite game that you actually purchased and downloaded onto your computer from Steam or Sony's PlayStation Store is no longer available in your library. Even car manufacturers manufacturers are putting basic features like heated seats behind a subscription-based paywall, despite the hardware being right there in your car. It's already built in, but the button to turn it on doesn't work unless you pay a monthly fee. All of this tyranny is only made possible by locking down the software to prevent the end user from having any control over it, and the consumers continuing to consume these kinds of products despite the abuse it brings upon them. And unfortunately, putting open source projects into the hands of unconscious consumers isn't going to fix the problem, because open source projects can be infiltrated and subverted as well. Microsoft is particularly skilled at this kind of subversion, and you best believe that they are fighting very hard against desktop Linux and Linux gaming consoles. So while the year of the Linux desktop may come as the result of market forces and performance benefits, the only way this golden era of computing will really stay around is if we understand and stick to the principles that brought it about in the first place.